A marriage of 4 decades, a tapestry woven with shared laughter and quiet understanding, now threatened to unravel. 40 years, so much time spent together, so many dreams built, so many grandchildren to cherish. Yet sometimes the relentless hand of fate writes a different, more brutal script. This is the harrowing tale of a man whose world shattered with a single devastating revelation. How does one navigate such treacherous waters? Let's plunge into the depths of his despair, and as you bear witness to this unfolding drama, please offer your powerful affirmation and subscribe to this channel. Tuesday dawned with a deceptively gentle promise. By its close, however, everything had irrevocably twisted into a nightmare. I awoke that morning, the familiar routine settling around me like a worn blanket. All seemed normal, save for the curious absence of Debbie, my wife, beside me. I, Tim Johnson, am usually the first to rise, my workday beginning promptly at 8. Debbie, ever the late riser, typically sleeps until 10. After my customary morning rituals, I descended the stairs, intending to brew coffee for both of us. But there she was, already dressed for work, seated at the breakfast table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee already perfuming the air. She greeted me with a radiant smile, and we exchanged our morning pleasantries. As I poured my own cup, she casually mentioned an early work meeting, adding that she'd be home by 5 for a chat. A jolt ran through me. Had I forgotten something monumental? Debbie, with a dismissive wave, assured me it could wait, that we'd discuss it later. And just like that, she placed her cup in the sink, pressed a swift, light kiss upon my cheek, and was gone before I could utter another word. Before we delve deeper into this unfolding tragedy, a crucial backdrop is necessary. My name is Tim Johnson, and Debbie, my wife, and I have been bound in what I believe to be a blissful marriage for over 4 decades. Our story began the moment we stepped out of high school, both 18, yet our connection stretched back even further to 2nd grade. Our adolescent years saw our bond deepen, and it became undeniably clear we were destined for a lifetime together. We were each other's first and only. I had never even shared a kiss with another woman, save for a platonic peck on the cheek, and I believed the same was true for my wife. We journeyed through college together, sharing a cramped budget apartment, working part-time to make ends meet. I was fortunate enough to be supported by the GI Bill, that invaluable program for U.S. Armed Forces veterans. Debbie's parents, bless them, eased her financial burden with their generous help towards tuition. Starting a family while still in college was a monumental undertaking, but with her parents' unwavering support, it proved challenging yet ultimately achievable. Now, our eldest daughter, Terry, is 37, happily married with 2 children of her own, forging a successful career as a family law attorney in an out-of-state firm. Darcy, our second daughter, recently turned 35, remains single, and serves as an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. And then there's Sydney, our youngest, 34, joyfully married to a police officer right here in our township. She dedicates herself to caring for our 2 youngest grandchildren, a tirelessly devoted stay-at-home mother. Our 3 daughters are the very essence of our pride and joy. After graduating, I embarked on a career as a risk analyst at a prominent insurance company. Debbie, meanwhile, chose to become a gymnasium teacher in a neighboring school district, eventually transitioning to a part-time administrative role. Both of us, now 59, still embrace a vibrant and active lifestyle. I find solace on the golf course, delight in swimming, and religiously hit the gym at least 3 times a week. But Debbie, she astounds me with her unwavering commitment to physical exercise. 5 days a week she's at the gym, almost daily pounding the pavement on long-distance runs. To my eyes, she remains the most breathtaking woman I have ever beheld. Despite bearing 3 children and enduring 41 years of marriage, her weight remains precisely what it was on our wedding day. In her youth, she was an undeniable force of nature, captivating every eye. Even now, she effortlessly turns heads, eliciting admiration from men half her age. Yet she carries herself with an innate grace and quiet confidence, radiating an unshakable dignity. Debbie and I often reflected on our immense fortune, on the sheer luck of having found each other and building our own version of the American dream. Every single day, we offered gratitude for the life we had painstakingly crafted together. Unlike many men, the ominous phrase, "Darling, we need to talk," held no terror for me. No wave of dread, no sudden clamminess of hands. In fact, I was usually intrigued. We spoke to each other often, a practice we fondly termed family conversations, a tradition born even before our children arrived. This was how we meticulously charted the course of our lives, but this time she had given no hint of such a discussion. At work, the impending conversation didn't weigh on me. My mind instead lingered on the incredible intimacy of the night before. Debbie has always been an assertive, vibrant partner in our relationship, a woman who knows precisely what she desires and how to achieve it. Despite our enduring marriage, she consistently reassured me that she would never change, declaring it would be too difficult to find a new lover. Our passion, even after all these years, remained undimmed. We still made love 3 times a week. Intrigued by her audacity, I left work early, hoping to arrive home before Debbie. I craved a moment of quiet relaxation with a glass of my favorite single malt before her arrival. But as I pulled into the garage, my curiosity abruptly curdled into alarm. Debbie's car was already there. My anxiety surged as I stepped inside to find her seated at the table, 2 glasses already filled, one with wine, the other with whiskey, waiting at my usual spot. She looked unnerved, her free hand nervously rubbing her knee, a telltale habit I'd known since we first met. I asked if I should change, but she insisted we begin immediately. "Sit down," she instructed, and I obeyed without a murmur. As I sank into the chair, a chilling sense of dread seized me. I knew with a certainty that pierced my very core that she was about to deliver devastating news. My chest constricted, each breath a struggle. Looking into her eyes, I encountered an unfamiliar, haunting expression. Her voice, when it came, was a trembling whisper, low and deliberate. "Tim, I've been wrestling with something for quite some time now, and I truly need to share it without interruption. I'm asking you to let me finish before you respond, so you fully grasp the weight of what I'm about to say." With every passing moment, her composure solidified. "I need you to remain calm and not allow this to escalate into a childish outburst. Can you promise me that?" I nodded, silently steeling myself for the impending storm. She offered a fleeting moment of reassurance. "I love you more than anything in this world, darling. You've been the sole inhabitant of my heart since high school. There has never, ever been anyone else." A premonition of doom, sharp and agonizing, pierced me. The pain in my chest intensified. Breathing became a desperate labor, and the nagging ache in my shoulder flared. She spoke of a future, of growing old together, surrounded by great-grandchildren, traveling the world hand in hand. But as her words continued, the pain in my shoulder migrated, a searing fire in my left arm. Dizziness swam over me, my breath catching in my throat. "Tim, listen carefully," Debbie urged, her voice now a strained whisper. "This is very important." I could only nod, unable to process the nightmare unfolding before me. "I've been contemplating this for months now, and I simply must act before it's too late. I need to explore dating other men to discover what I've been missing all this time. It won't be forever, perhaps just 6 months, and then I'll return to being your devoted wife, showering you with the full depth of my love every single day." I struggled to speak, but the words were trapped, frozen on my lips. Suddenly an impenetrable darkness consumed me. Light struggled to penetrate the swirling haze. My eyelids grew impossibly heavy as I fought to pry them open. Finally, with a monumental effort, I succeeded, my mind grappling to make sense of my surroundings. Confusion reigned. A persistent, disorienting beeping echoed in the background. My body refused to obey, my throat raw. Questions swirled. Where am I? What has happened to me? The horrifying realization dawned. I was in a hospital. Lying in that sterile bed, the truth slammed into me with brutal force. I am Tim Johnson, and my wife. My wife tried to end my life. But why? I desperately tried to piece together the fragmented memories. A vague recollection of sitting at the kitchen table, her voice speaking to me. Then it hit me. It wasn't a conversation. It was a threat. As my mind slowly cleared, a nurse appeared at my bedside, her smile gentle. "Welcome back, Mr. Johnson," she murmured. "I'm Nurse Smith. You're currently in Mercy Hospital, recovering from a severe heart attack, what we call a widowmaker. It's a miracle you're still with us. It's 3 in the morning, and the doctor will be here later this morning to discuss your condition in more detail." I tried to speak, but my throat was parched, raw, and no sound emerged. "Don't try to speak, Mr. Johnson," Nurse Smith gently advised. "Your throat needs time to recover from the ventilator." She handed me a notepad and pen. She then informed me that I had visitors, including my wife and daughters. I shook my head, quickly scrawling in large, emphatic letters, "No visitors." Her surprise was evident, but she inquired, "Are you sure?" I merely nodded, then wrote another note, asking her not to divulge any of my medical information. Despite her raised eyebrows, she nodded in agreement as I scrawled one more desperate request. "Is there anyone here who can help me fill out a waiver of resuscitation form?" Nurse Smith was clearly taken aback by my plea, yet she maintained her calm. "Your condition isn't that critical," she assured me. But I furiously interrupted her, underlining the words in my notebook. "I will convey your wishes." "I will convey your wishes to the day shift," she said, patting my shoulder comfortingly before leaving the room. It felt as though my life had already ended. Why strive to save it with the intervention of doctors, knowing my luck I would likely survive, only to remain in a vegetative state? I decided to let fate dictate its course. Besides, it would be an even greater shock for my wife to discover what I had done and just how deeply she had wounded me. Insomnia became my tormentor. For days I lay in that hospital bed, unable to find rest, my mind ceaselessly churning, strategizing. Though I had presented myself as a mere risk analyst for an insurance company, my true role was to help our clients meticulously dissect their business risks. This service was in high demand, many clients relying heavily on my expertise. I had held this position for years, excelling in my duties and receiving commensurate compensation. From my vast experience, I knew this. Every company harbors its own unique fears, and my purpose was to ensure they focused on the right anxieties, offering solutions to mitigate those risks. I realized that a structured approach existed for such analyses, and I resolved to apply the same method to my own predicament. While I knew my wife hadn't literally intended to harm me with her words, it felt as though she had come perilously close. The decision I had just made to surrender control offered a strange, fleeting respite, an essential pause for formulating a strategy for my uncertain future. Lying in bed, awaiting the dawn, I began to rigorously assess my situation. I am one of those eccentric individuals who conduct internal dialogues when deep in thought, and this instance was no exception. So I bought myself some precious time. I needed to dissect the very essence of the matter. There was nothing unusual about my wife's direct and concise communication style. She hadn't tried to shock me with her words. This was simply her nature. What exactly had she said? She had been contemplating this for months. Had I genuinely failed to notice any signs, any shifts in her behavior? Were there any subtle verbal cues I had missed? Could it be possible that she had already been unfaithful to me? I answered both questions with a resounding no. Debbie is not impulsive, not prone to spontaneous actions. She is meticulously methodical in her approach, And once a decision is made, she pursues it without hesitation or indecision. Furthermore, and this is crucial, she did not express a desire to date other men. She stated her intention to do so. I faced a grave problem, one unlikely to simply fade away, especially given its devastating impact on my health. The situation was dire, but here were the options I saw before me. Firstly, I could allow her to continue seeing other men, clinging to the desperate hope that she would eventually come to her senses and everything would revert to normal. Secondly, I could try to persuade her to abandon this path, for the very thought of sharing my wife with another was unbearable. Thirdly, I could bring an end to our marriage and move forward with my life. And finally, I could simply surrender, no longer concerning myself with the matter. To be honest, the fourth option, at that moment, seemed less terrible than the agony I was enduring. Yet I still felt a profound sense of despair. My assumptions, it turned out, were entirely wrong. I must have, against all odds, drifted into sleep, for the next sensation was sunlight streaming through the window, the wall clock displaying 11 in the morning. Shortly after I awoke, the doctor arrived. He informed me that the heart attack I had suffered was a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery of the heart. He noted that I was incredibly fortunate, as the probability of survival with such an attack is typically very low. If my wife hadn't called emergency services, I wouldn't be alive. Despite his emphasis on my luck, I felt no joy. I asked if severe stress could have triggered the attack, to which he explained that while emotional trauma can be a catalyst, major heart problems had long existed within me, a combination of genetics and high cholesterol. I asked out of pure curiosity, seeking the root cause of my sudden collapse. I attempted to describe the situation with my wife as best I could. "Ah," he replied, "that clarifies why you requested no visitors, Mr. Johnson. You'll need to stay here for a few more days, and it's paramount that you rest and recover during this time. The recovery process will take time, but we were able to install a stent instead of a bypass, which should shorten your recovery. Unfortunately, I cannot assist you with your personal problems. I strongly recommend contacting a psychologist to help you navigate those issues. As you begin your journey to recovery, you might be surprised to learn that depression is a common side effect of a heart attack like yours. Given your relationship problems, you may be particularly vulnerable." With those words, he departed the room without a goodbye, a typical characteristic of doctors who prioritize treatment over communication with patients. Another doctor then entered, introducing herself as a hospitalist. She rattled off a lengthy list of medications I would require over the next year. It felt as though I was being handed the entire inventory of a pharmacy. At this point, the idea of the fourth solution, utter surrender, seemed increasingly appealing. As soon as the hospitalist left, a commotion erupted in the hallway. It was my wife making a scene, furious at being denied access to me. She demanded information about my condition, but security was ultimately called to escort her away when she was informed that I had specifically requested she not be privy to any details about my health. For the first time since her devastating pronouncement, a small sense of calm settled over me. It might seem trivial, even foolish, but for me it was a small, fragile triumph. It turned out the doctor, having learned of my distress, had administered a sedative, or perhaps I was simply so utterly exhausted that I ended up sleeping for more than a day. When I finally awoke, it was the middle of the night, and Nurse Smith stood beside me. "I'm glad to see you awake," she said, attempting to offer a cheerful tone. She then asked if we could talk, and I nodded in agreement, making sure she called me Tim. I was grateful that I could still speak despite a slight hoarseness. She grinned and assented, asking me to call her Beth. As we began to converse, she acknowledged my situation and respected my no visitors rule, but expressed concern about the DNR request. I asked her to ignore the DNR, explaining that I wasn't ready to die yet and that eventually I would have to talk to my wife, but I wanted to wait until I was fully recovered. Beth agreed, adding that she had to ask my wife and daughters to leave the room before I woke up. She understood that I would eventually have to talk to my wife, but suggested I could talk to my daughters first. And then it hit me. Did my daughters know what their mother had told me? The girls were intensely devoted to their mother, so it was possible they knew of her intentions in advance, though it seemed unlikely. Debbie had a very close relationship with Darcy, and they communicated regularly, so Darcy might be aware. Perhaps Debbie had shared the truth with the girls after the events related to me. Regardless, I agreed with Beth that I needed to talk to my daughters. The older girls had traveled a great distance to be with me, and Beth promised to bring them in, one at a time, for a conversation. I made it clear that I was not ready to speak with my wife, and she respected my wishes. I was surprised that the girls returned to my room so quickly. Most likely, Beth had only sent them to the waiting room for a short while. I thought everything was taken care of, and I couldn't wait to see my daughters. That evening, I spoke to each daughter separately, making it explicitly clear that I did not wish to discuss their mother. Instead, I told them how overjoyed I was to see them and how deeply I loved them. Tears welled in my eyes, and a wave of worry washed over me as I realized just how close I had come to losing them forever. During our conversation, Sydney mentioned that Debbie had hinted at feeling responsible for my situation, without revealing any details. I didn't argue with Sydney, realizing she found it peculiar. She also noted that Debbie had committed to meeting with them the next day to provide a full explanation. Terry and Darcy informed me they planned to take extended leave to aid in my recovery. The surge of emotion was so overwhelming that Beth had to end the visit prematurely. When I saw my daughters, I realized that no matter how my fate with Debbie unfolded, life would go on. While my life would undoubtedly become more challenging, it would not cease. The only decision remaining was about my relationship with my spouse. Was it even worth discussing with her? Even if she retracted her words, would I be able to coexist with her? I needed to find out before contacting her. Perhaps the girls would help me make the right decision. If Sydney was right, Debbie must have told them what caused my heart attack, so their opinion might be valuable. Infidelity, after all, affects not just the couple, but the entire family. An unexpected turn of events. My wife and daughters decided that I would stay in our house, and my wife would move in with Sydney's family. Terry and Darcy agreed to take turns caring for me during my recovery. The doctors assured me that I would return to normal life within 6 months. This arrangement was fine with me, but I couldn't help but notice that for the first 2 weeks I was home, my wife paid me no attention whatsoever. It occurred to me that perhaps the girls had intervened, advising her to give me some space. I wondered if she was using this opportunity for her dating. I wasn't sure if that was the case, but I also didn't want to engage in a direct confrontation with her. Instead, I decided to speak with Darcy first, as she had always been close to her mother and might have some insight into her state of mind. Darcy and I met alone at the house, and she understood that I wanted to discuss the situation. Like my wife, I am a straightforward man, so as soon as Darcy entered, I asked her, "Darcy, how long have you known that your mother wants to date other men?" "We discussed it casually," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "When did this happen, Darcy?" I exclaimed, my voice rising. "I'm sorry, Dad. It was about 3 or 4 months ago." My anger simmered, threatening to boil over. I needed to regain control. "I'm sorry, Darcy," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "I didn't mean to raise my voice. I appreciate your honesty. This news has deeply affected me. I completely overlooked the fact that your mother was unhappy with our relationship. It truly hurts me to realize this." I tried to soothe myself. "She just wants to learn something new before it's too late. It won't affect our connection in any way." "Do you truly believe that, Darcy? How can her intimacy with other men not affect me? I'm shocked you can say that. Do you think I should let her explore relationships with other men to expand her experience and then return to me as if nothing had changed?" "Maybe not exactly, but your love for her should be firm enough to support her in this. She dedicated her life to her family, and now she wants something for herself." Dad, maybe you've slowed down a little at 59. It's quite understandable that Mom is interested in younger men. This is a common desire for women. Darcy's words struck me like a physical blow. This revelation was entirely unexpected. I had assumed Debbie didn't want to date older men, but when my daughter confirmed it, I was stunned. It turned out her meetings were based solely on intimacy. I thought I was meeting her needs, but apparently I was wrong. Shouldn't her love for me be enough to satisfy her desires? The fact that I had slowed down did not justify her seeking satisfaction elsewhere. "Don't be ridiculous, Daddy," she said. "If you knew about it, it wouldn't be considered treason. That's why she tried to discuss it with you." We danced around this topic for another 5 or 10 minutes, achieving nothing. Darcy had made her point clear. I had to end this conversation before I lost my temper. "What now, Daddy?" Darcy asked, her voice tinged with a childlike innocence. "I'm not sure, Darcy. I really don't know, but I can't accept your mom dating other men. It's just not something I can put up with." I knew Debbie would soon learn of our conversation. We hugged and said goodbye. I silently wished for Darcy either not to marry or to reveal her astonishing beliefs to her future spouse. In stark contrast, my conversation with Terry was entirely different. She burst into the room, agitated, exclaiming, "I can't believe she's doing this to us." "Hey," I said, raising my hand, "this is your mom, and she isn't hurting all of us, only me." "Dad, when one family member commits adultery, it affects everyone, so yes, she is unfaithful to her family." "Terry, you're talking about infidelity, not potential infidelity. You don't know all the details, do you?" "Dad, she dated other men while you were in the hospital. I suspect she started doing it even before your heart attack. And though no physical intimacy bound them, a profound connection undeniably linked her to them. A chilling certainty settled within me. My bond with Darcy was irrevocably shattered by these stark revelations. It wouldn't have shocked me in the slightest if Debbie had already moved on, found solace in another's embrace. The whole affair was a bizarre tableau. I braced myself for the familiar assault on my well-being, yet strangely it never materialized. Instead, a profound sadness enveloped me. I had braced myself for yet another assault on my health, but it simply faded into a quiet resignation, an acceptance of my marriage's inevitable demise. To be brutally honest, Debbie's actions held no real shock for me. Her spirit had always been fiercely independent, a force unto itself. What truly perplexed me, what gnawed at my very core, was why she had summoned help when my heart seized. It defied all logic, and the question echoed in the cavern of my mind. Should I even entertain the idea of sitting across from her at the negotiating table? Terry and I delved deeper into the intricate labyrinth of our state's divorce statutes. Here, divorce unfolded without the specter of fault. Terry, ever the pragmatist, offered a lifeline. Consider a separation if the finality of a complete severing from Debbie felt too daunting. I acknowledged her counsel, yet deep down I knew it would merely postpone the inevitable. The truth was, Terry's subsequent revelation truly seized my attention. While my wife couldn't ultimately prevent the dissolution of our union, she possessed the power to delay it. This ignited a desperate urgency within me to seek immediate legal counsel. Terry, ever dependable, promised to furnish me with such guidance the following day. My primary objective in speaking with Sydney was to quell the tempest raging within her. She was visibly distraught, tears streaming down her face, insisting that I escort Debbie home. I gently reminded her that I hadn't banished Debbie. She was free to return at her leisure. This house, after all, was as much hers as it was mine. Then a few direct questions escaped my lips. "Sydney, did your mom go to those meetings after I was hospitalized?" I already knew the answer I craved, yet I desperately needed to hear the truth. Sydney simply nodded, silent tears a relentless deluge. "How often, Sid?" I pressed, my voice thick with emotion. Her quiet confession was a dagger to the heart. Almost every night, Daddy. Daddy, she continued, her voice trembling. I tried to talk to her about it. I told her she was cheating on you, but she claimed it wasn't cheating because there was no intimacy. She even said she'd told you about it beforehand. I could only shake my head in disbelief. Before Sydney departed, I contacted her mother, informing her of my improved condition and reiterating that she could return home whenever she pleased. I emphasized with urgent conviction that she should do so immediately, lest Sydney suffer a breakdown from the continued strain of her presence. I ended the call, deaf to her responses, my focus now entirely on the looming confrontation. Sydney had announced that Daddy would be home for lunch the next day, and I spent the remainder of my day meticulously organizing my notes. A meticulously crafted plan is the bedrock of any strategic encounter, and I was armed and ready for the impending challenge. However, as the old adage goes, the first shot often shatters the finest plan, and so it proved in my case. When Debbie returned home, she didn't merely enter. She burst through the door, her voice a thunderclap. "Where are you?" My eyes widened as she discovered me seated at the table, my meticulously arranged notes spread out before me like a battlefield map. Ignoring any opportunity for me to interject, she launched into a passionate tirade, her declaration echoing through the house. There will be no divorce. It's crucial to understand that my wife, a schoolteacher by profession, harbored a fervent passion for history, especially the tumultuous era of the American Civil War. It became chillingly clear that she was now employing the very tactics of Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain of the 20th Maine Regiment on Little Round Top during the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. In a desperate situation, Chamberlain's regiment, the Union Army's extreme left flank, served as the final bulwark against Lee's Confederate forces pressing towards Washington. The battle raged, his troops were exhausted, ammunition dwindled, and losses were catastrophically high. All hope seemed lost. Yet Chamberlain, a seemingly unassuming college professor of rhetoric, defied all civilian expectations, ordering his remaining troops to charge. This audacious maneuver ultimately turned the tide in favor of the Union. Similarly, my wife, when she should have been on the defensive, unleashed a surprise attack that left me utterly stunned and helpless. I found myself lying defeated on our bed, Debbie beside me, all my strength drained. Finally, she began to dress, declaring she would return the next day with her belongings so we could move forward. As she moved towards the bedroom door, I whispered, "Thanks for calling the ambulance." She merely nodded, an exasperated sigh escaping her lips. "It's because I care about you. We've been together a long time." With these words, she urged me to rest, claiming we had lost time to recover, and then she was gone. "Debbie," I uttered, summoning every ounce of authority I possessed, "I must clarify one more thing. If you lie with another, our marriage is truly over." She shivered with a strange excitement, then retorted defiantly, "We'll see." Over the ensuing months, a semblance of normalcy settled, yet it was a disquieting new routine. She continued her clandestine liaisons, though the ultimatum was never spoken again. She never divulged the details of her dates, but often she would announce her departure and return late into the night, once or twice a week. Despite her disheveled appearance on these evenings, she never carried the scent of another's intimacy. After showering and settling into bed, she would resume her subtle, seductive courtship of me. Ultimately, I accepted this strange equilibrium, a morbid thought lingering. If death were to claim me, this was as good a way as any to depart this life. I clung to the certainty that she wasn't truly with anyone else, a certainty born purely of my own conviction. That evening she returned even later than usual in the dead of night. I lay awake in bed, unable to sleep in her absence. It wasn't concern for her safety that held me captive, but a chilling anticipation of what was to come. The garage door's groan heralded her arrival, followed by the familiar clatter of her high heels on the kitchen tile and the creak of the stairs as she ascended. When she entered the bedroom, our eyes met, and in that instant everything was understood without a single word. It was clear she knew that I knew. She turned away, heading for the bathroom, her voice devoid of emotion. "It doesn't matter. This is temporary and it will end soon. Let's not dwell on it." With that, she closed the door. As soon as I heard the shower running, I made my way to the guest room, not only locking the door but barricading it with a chest of drawers. For some inexplicable reason, I knew she wouldn't pursue me. It simply wasn't her style. She believed that once my anger cooled, everything would revert to normal, and in her own way, she was right. She uttered not a single word to me for the rest of the evening. Conversely, I couldn't close my eyes. Tears welled, mourning the quiet dissolution of my marriage, while my mind, restless and alert, raced with plans for the future. Over the next few weeks, we became like polite strangers. We maintained a civil veneer, simply going about our daily tasks and anxieties. I knew she had left the house several more times, but her activities remained shrouded in mystery. I had retreated to the guest room, usually asleep by the time she returned. Surprisingly, I found an unexpected solace in my plans, growing calmer and more resolute in the course I had chosen. There was not a moment of self-pity or doubt. I didn't question what could have been improved, nor did I criticize myself for not being a more attentive spouse. I offered no apologies, accepted no blame for failing to fully grasp my wife's emotions. From my perspective, marriage was a pact, and she, not I, had shattered it. She never confided in me about her problems or frustrations. Instead, she made unilateral decisions without discussion. Despite this, I could comprehend her desire to explore. After all, it's a fundamental human inclination. Yet she had denied us the chance to navigate it together, to seek an alternative solution. She had single-handedly made the decision that ultimately led to our unraveling, no questions asked. I understood why she felt the need to take matters into her own hands. In most Western marriages, women often wield more control, and ours was no exception. Looking back, I can now acknowledge my own passivity. In all our years together, I had never once confronted her about unacceptable behavior. I had allowed her to orchestrate our home life, her happiness outweighing all else in my mind. Before we exchanged vows, we had meticulously discussed our expectations of fidelity, establishing clear, unambiguous boundaries. I had always been faithful, never even entertaining the thought of straying. I had expected the same unwavering loyalty from Debbie. It was her betrayal that had caused the edifice of our relationship to crumble, not any action of mine. Just a few weeks after Debbie's initial transgressions, I was mentally prepared. That evening when she left, I awaited her return at the kitchen table, the very heart of our family life. When she finally walked in, I calmly stated, "Debbie, we need to talk." She dismissed me with a wave of her hand. "Not now. I need to shower and get some sleep. Maybe we can talk in the morning." With my newfound authority, I insisted, "No. We'll talk now. Please sit down." She sank into the chair opposite me, her face a mask of anger and irritation. Her nervousness was palpable, perhaps the lingering scent of another clinging to her, but I ignored it. I slid a manila envelope across the table. "These are the divorce papers," I declared firmly. "I've filed them due to irreconcilable differences." When she began to speak, I raised my hand to silence her. "No, just sit here. Months ago, you told me to listen to you without interruption, and now I expect the same." She leaned back, rolled her eyes, crossed her arms, and fixed her gaze on me. "These documents," I continued, "contain all the information you need. Inside the envelope is my lawyer's contact information. Please sign them and return them to his office. If you fail to do so within 3 days, I will be forced to serve them to you at your place of work. I'd rather not embarrass you publicly, but it won't be difficult for me to do so in front of your many lovers. I wasn't following you. I have no evidence of your infidelity, No photos, audio, or video. None of that matters to me. Here's the thing. In a no-fault state, everything is divided equally. Our children are grown and independent. The house is fully paid off. We will settle our shared credit card debts and move on with our lives. Are you done? She asked, her tone haughty. I nodded. She stood. Okay, but we're not getting divorced. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Good night. The next morning, she expressed a desire to talk. What truly caught my attention was that for the first time in a long time, she had prepared a wonderful breakfast for us. She looked surprisingly cheerful, bustling about the kitchen. After serving breakfast and observing my shocked expression, she calmly sat down at the table, gesturing for me to join her. It all felt utterly surreal. I chose not to sit, informing her I would be eating elsewhere, and then walked out the door. She had no inkling that I was heading to a rented apartment near my workplace, with no intention of returning to our house except to retrieve my belongings after the divorce was finalized. Perhaps she cried softly as I drove away, but I couldn't be sure. In that moment, I was resolute. No more direct conversations. Our communication would flow solely through our lawyers. As expected, she resisted signing the divorce papers. As promised, I officially served her with a summons at her workplace. She swiftly engaged a lawyer and began to obstruct the divorce proceedings. Despite my and our daughter's attempts to persuade her otherwise, she remained unyielding. Ultimately, however, her efforts were in vain, and the divorce proceeded as planned. 6 months later, we found ourselves in family court with our respective lawyers. I was too consumed with the desire to finalize it as quickly as possible to pay much attention to the proceedings. This was the only official hearing I was required to attend, a necessity my lawyer had assured me of. A wave of relief washed over me when the judge turned to address my wife directly. I settled into my seat, listening intently. Mrs. Johnson, the judge inquired of my wife, why do you not agree to grant the divorce petition as written? From the perspective of property distribution, everything appears equitable. My wife, standing before the judge, impeccably dressed, replied, Your Honor, a few months ago, in the throes of menopause, I made a disastrous choice that ultimately led to the breakup of our 41-year marriage. Feeling insecure and unattractive, I succumbed to the attention and flattery of younger men at work, foolishly believing that my husband would understand and grant me a pass for a few fleeting flirtations. When he discovered my infidelity, it came as a profound shock to me, for I foolishly believed he was not opposed to my actions. It's clear now that I was gravely mistaken. After he served me with the divorce papers, I ceased all contact. I attended therapy several times a week, and my therapist helped me realize the error of my ways. Although I cannot stop him from pursuing a divorce, I hope we can attend couples counseling to save our marriage. It's only fair that my husband agrees to joint therapy before announcing the divorce, Debbie said, settling back into her seat at the table, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. I was certain the judge would side with Debbie, so powerfully had her speech resonated with him. But that was not what I wanted. I looked desperately at my lawyer for help. Then the judge turned to me. Mr. Johnson, are you listening to me? What do you make of your wife's arguments? My heart sank as I realized the judge was suggesting we attempt to salvage our long-standing relationship. Damn, I muttered to myself. I can't believe this is happening to me. My wife was practically ecstatic. My lawyer was furiously scribbling notes in a notebook. I was in serious trouble. But then a sudden realization dawned on me. I was ready to fight back. The battle had already begun. Your Honor, I began, may I have a moment to consider what my wife has just said? She has presented some strong arguments that I need to discuss with my lawyer. The judge replied amiably, Of course, I think that would be wise. The atmosphere in the courtroom now felt like a scene from a Hallmark movie. I immediately turned to my lawyer and asked, What happens if I withdraw my divorce application right now? Will you be able to schedule counseling sessions in a new way? My lawyer, who bore a striking resemblance to Clarence Darrow, a renowned American lawyer famous for his involvement in landmark cases, turned to me and firmly stated that the court no longer had jurisdiction over this case. When I inquired about the consequences of my disappearance, he explained that in a year my wife could file for divorce, citing abandonment. Only if luck is on my side, I replied, mulling over the idea before letting out a heavy sigh. Is there a requirement that I continue to live with my wife? Different options spun through my head. No, there is no requirement, he replied, adopting his legalistic tone. Suddenly it dawned on him and he asked, will I still receive payments? Absolutely, Clarence, I assured him, grinning broadly. I straightened my tie, wiped my hands on my trousers, and confidently rose to address the court. Everyone was hoping for a happy ending, just like in a Hallmark movie, and I was ready to give it to them. Your Honor, I declared, after my wife's powerful speech, I have decided to withdraw my petition for divorce. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Well, not quite chaos, just a few people milling about during their lunch break. The judge banged his gavel, officially ending the trial. My wife and her lawyer were weeping with happiness. I was seething, but I forced what I hoped was a happy face and walked out of the courtroom. I went to my car, my wife trailing behind me, muttering something about how happy we were, blah, blah, blah. I started the car and left her in the parking lot, wondering what had just transpired. After leaving the parking lot, I tossed my phone into the bushes and drove directly to work, where I immediately presented myself to the HR department and retired at the age of 59 and a half. I realized I could rely on my 401k as a source of financial security. Although I was still a few years from receiving Social Security, I was confident in my ability to support myself with this money and other assets after the divorce. I visited the bank to settle the necessary financial issues. Our fully paid-off house was valued at almost $1 million, and our other assets were roughly the same. I decided to transfer everything to my name exclusively and refinance the house in Debbie's name. Since my family was unaware of my whereabouts and only contacted me for work or by phone, I was able to execute my plan without interference. After arranging a meeting with Debbie, I drove up to the house that had once been ours, now most likely belonging to my wife, in my brand new 11-foot Class A Georgetown motorhome. In the back, a fresh Jeep Wrangler awaited a new adventure. I knocked on the door and heard Debbie and our 3 daughters approaching from inside. I had forewarned them of my arrival, anticipating trouble and wanting them to look after Debbie. "Darling, you're back. We were so worried about you," they exclaimed, gathering around me. The daughters were already inspecting the motorhome, sensing something was amiss. "Actually," I said solemnly, "I came to say goodbye." "Say goodbye? What does say goodbye mean? We'll always be together, right?" Debbie asked, concern clouding her voice. "We've always been together, darling," I assured her. "I'm going away for a while." "Deb, what about work, Tim?" "I'm retired, Deb. I'm going to spend some time traveling around the country. But I can't leave the school district so soon. School has already started. I know traveling around the country in a motorhome is our dream, but I can't do it right now." She still didn't understand, unlike her daughters, who, shocked, fixed their piercing gazes on me. They knew perfectly well that I was about to abandon them to deal with an unreasonable and senseless mother, and their displeasure was palpable. "Debbie, we need to go inside and talk. I have a lot to tell you, and I want to hear your thoughts." Reluctantly, we all went into the kitchen and took our places at the familiar table. Memories of past family gatherings flooded back to me, making the realization that this might be our last meeting almost unbearable. "I've been thinking about my situation for the last few weeks," I began. "I found that all traces of anger had dissipated. I was no longer plagued by nervousness, fear, and self-doubt. Instead, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years." Based on this profound shift, I started the conversation. First of all, I want to apologize to you, Debbie, and to you girls, for my initial reaction when I found out about your affairs with other men. I admit that my behavior in the hospital was immature. I raised my hand to signal Debbie to pause before she could respond. Please let me finish my thoughts. I understand that the heart attack was not your fault. By a strange coincidence, your presence may have saved my life. A heart attack was inevitable, but thanks to your quick actions when you called for help, I'm still here. The paramedics confirmed this to me, so I am sincerely grateful. This realization has been haunting me since our court session. Debbie, we have never been independent because we have been together since school years. Now I understand how you felt when you shared your intentions with me. At first, I focused on the most personal aspect of your desires, but now I understand that what you really wanted was privacy. You wanted to assert your independence and take control of your own life. It dawned on me that I'm in a similar situation to you. Our lives have been intertwined for so long, but now I also feel the need to live on my own. I think it's important for both of us to spend some time apart to reveal our individuality. I let her speak, not interrupting, knowing it was futile. The thought of being alone scares me. I swore never to let you go. We will always be inseparable. I regret my words. I was in a dark place. Despite tears and sniffling, she managed to utter the words. She seemed to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The girls, though visibly upset, remained calm and silent. Deb, I said, I understand and accept your decision to never give me a divorce. I don't want to get divorced anymore. It doesn't matter to me anymore. But we're not going to live together. I need to find myself outside of our relationship. During our conversation, I handed her the inheritance certificate. I'm giving you the house and taking most of our other assets to ensure an equal division. The girls were visibly upset when they realized the situation. My dear Tim, please think again. Please reconsider your decision. I can make it up to you, and I believe that in the end you will forgive me. It's been a few months since I last dated anyone. My therapist helped me realize the fallacy of my path. Please reconsider your decision. You promised to come back. I've already forgiven you, Deb. Maybe one day I'll come back too. I'm releasing you from our marriage vows. I want you to be free and be able to do what makes you happy without feeling guilty. I just can't stay here while you're doing this. How can I contact you if I need to talk? You can't just leave me like that. This is wrong. She covered her head with her hands, crying uncontrollably and unable to say anything more. Turning to my daughters, I apologized for what had happened. I assured them of my eternal love and urged them to take care of their mother. I gave them my email address so they could contact me, as due to my capricious lifestyle, I had neither a phone nor a permanent address. After walking out the door and leaving them in tears, I climbed into my motorhome and drove off into the unknown, beginning a new chapter of my life without looking back. Alone, I was determined never to see this lying, lustful woman again, to whom I had given my whole life. I often called the girls, and a year after my departure, they told me that their mother was behaving inappropriately. She began to pursue much younger men, 20 years her junior, and her outfits were often shockingly provocative for her age. To add insult to injury, Debbie started flirting with our daughters' husbands, a behavior that stunned everyone. As a result, Debbie is now profoundly lonely and unhappy. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end. And please kindly turn your attention to the screen after this message. There you'll find a full playlist of thrilling stories, a subscribe button for the channel, and our most captivating story. Click, enjoy, and thank you.